everybody, or I think a lot of people had heard of Donald Trump at the time. So I get on the line, and he begins to say to me, "I've been watching you." And he starts to repeat to me, almost verbatim, 3 of my sermons on the value of vision.
Donald Trump, the U.S. president known for his controversial leadership, has long drawn attention for his ties to influential Christian leaders. Now, at age 80, the spotlight is on 5 televangelists who have played key roles in his faith journey. What made these pastors so important to him? Was it their messages, spiritual guidance, or personal relationships? Join us as we uncover the stories behind Trump's closest televangelist connections. Number 5. Paula White, the woman behind Trump's faith. The first time Paula White prayed with Donald Trump was back when he was still known primarily as the host of the popular reality television show, The Apprentice. At the time, there was little indication of how significant their relationship would eventually become. But a little more than a decade later, White would find herself in a very different position. Leading the nation in prayer as the billionaire businessman was inaugurated as the 45th President of the United States. Over the years, White became far more than just a religious figure in Trump's circle. She emerged as one of his closest spiritual advisors and one of his most loyal and outspoken defenders during his first 7 months in office. Her support for Trump became especially noticeable because of the way she connected his political position to her religious beliefs. On Monday, while appearing on the right-wing talk show The Jim Bakker Show, White, who was 51 at the time, suggested that those who openly criticized or opposed Trump could, in some way, also be standing against what she believed was God's plan. He's been raised up by God because God says that He raises up and places all people in places of authority. It is God that raises up a king. It is God that sets one down. And so when you fight against the plan of God, you're fighting against the hand of God, White said. White's close relationship with Trump developed at the same time that she was building her own reputation and influence as a popular televangelist, pastor, and religious personality. Her journey to becoming one of America's most recognizable Christian figures was far from ordinary. Born in Mississippi, White experienced a difficult and deeply troubled childhood. Her father died in a self-inflicted death, and she has publicly claimed that she was sexually and physically abused as a teenager. At the age of 18, she converted to Christianity after claiming that she experienced a powerful vision in which God told her that He wanted her to preach the gospel. From there, White's religious career continued to grow, eventually taking her from a young Christian convert to a prominent televangelist with a large following. Since 2012, she has served as the senior pastor of New Destiny Christian Center, a megachurch in Florida that attracts thousands of worshipers to its weekly services. Beyond her work in the church, she also leads Paula White Ministries and has become a familiar face on television and radio, where she regularly appears as a Christian commentator and discusses religion, faith, and current issues. Was Paula White the only televangelist who influenced Trump, or were there others? Keep watching to find out. Number 4. Franklin Graham. Trump's relationship with Franklin Graham. Franklin Graham is one of the most recognizable Christian evangelists in the United States and has also become one of Donald Trump's most visible religious supporters. As the son of the legendary evangelist Billy Graham, Franklin Graham grew up surrounded by the world of Christian ministry and eventually built a major reputation of his own. His connection to Trump, however, has taken his public influence in a different direction, placing him among the religious leaders who have stood closest to the president throughout his political career. Graham has repeatedly shown his support for Trump, even during moments when the president has faced criticism from members of the Christian community. One example came when Trump shared an AI-generated image on Truth Social that appeared to portray him in a Jesus-like way. The image quickly caused controversy, with some conservative Christian commentators calling it inappropriate and even describing it as blasphemous. But Graham did not immediately join the criticism. Instead, he defended Trump and said he did not believe the president knowingly intended to portray himself as Jesus Christ. "I do not believe President Trump would knowingly depict himself as Jesus Christ. That would certainly be inappropriate," Graham wrote on X. He explained that when he looked at the image, he did not see the same message that others were seeing. According to Graham, the image contained no halo, cross, or angel, calling the backlash exaggerated and politically motivated. His response highlighted the strong bond between the two men. Beyond election support, Graham has consistently defended Trump, even when criticism came from conservative and Christian communities. That loyalty has helped make Graham one of the most recognizable religious figures associated with Trump's political movement. Graham's influence also comes from his own position within American Christianity. Through his ministry and public appearances, he has built a large following among conservative Christians and has become a powerful voice on religion, politics, and social issues. His family name adds another layer to his influence. His father, Billy Graham, was one of the most famous evangelists of the 20th century and had relationships with several American presidents. Franklin Graham has continued that tradition of maintaining close connections with political leaders while remaining active in Christian ministry. His relationship with Trump became particularly important as the former businessman built a strong connection with evangelical voters. Although Trump was not traditionally viewed as a deeply religious political figure, he managed to gain the support of many influential Christian leaders. Figures such as Graham helped provide religious credibility and a strong connection to conservative Christian voters who became an important part of Trump's political base. That relationship has continued through moments of both praise and controversy. While some Christian leaders have occasionally questioned Trump's actions or statements, Graham has often chosen to defend the president or give him the benefit of the doubt. His response to the controversial AI-generated image was another example of that approach. Graham also responded positively to a separate image Trump shared showing Jesus guiding and embracing him. Rather than criticizing that image, Graham said that everyone needs to listen to Jesus and suggested that some people were trying to interpret Trump's message in a way that made it appear more controversial than it actually was. What other televangelists' teachings could Donald Trump have admired? Stay tuned to find out. Number 3. Robert Jeffress, Trump's trusted pastor. Dr. Robert Jeffress has a lot to deal with in the coming months, but even with everything happening at his church, he has continued to maintain his close relationship with one of the most powerful figures in America, Donald Trump. In June, First Baptist Dallas will begin construction on a new sanctuary to replace the historic church building that was destroyed and reduced to ashes by a devastating fire in July 2024. The fire may have destroyed the building, but it did not destroy the faith of the people who worshipped there. Even after the disaster, members of First Baptist Dallas continued coming together, seeking God, and worshiping despite no longer having their historic sanctuary. Our church is not built on a denomination or on tradition. It's built on the unchanging truths of God's Word. And that's a solid foundation on which to build a church, Jeffress said. While Jeffress has been dealing with the rebuilding of his church, he has also continued making time for a very important relationship at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. His friendship with Donald Trump has made him one of the most visible pastors in the president's religious circle, and Jeffress has never been shy about showing his support for Trump. He said that shortly after the war with Iran began, he visited the president at the White House and personally spoke with him about the growing conflict. A couple of days after the war began in Iran, I was in the Oval Office with him. and I thanked him for his courage in confronting an evil that posed an existential threat to the survival of America, Israel, and the entire world, Jeffress said. That meeting was another example of the unusual access Jeffress has had to Trump. While many pastors may offer their support from a distance, Jeffress has been able to meet with the president directly and speak with him during some of the most serious moments of his presidency. His willingness to defend Trump's decisions has also made him one of the Christian leaders most closely associated with the president. Trump's Easter message became another moment when Jeffress stood firmly behind him. Trump had criticized Iran and appeared to threaten military action, describing Tuesday as Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one. The president also used strong and offensive language in the message, which came during an important Christian holiday. Some critics argued that Trump's words were inappropriate and that his tone should have reflected the peaceful and religious meaning of Easter. Jeffress, however, did not see the situation in the same way. Instead, he defended Trump and argued that the president should not be judged as though he were a religious teacher whose responsibility was to speak like a pastor at all times. Could these be the end of Donald Trump's religious journey, or will more televangelists continue to influence him? Stay tuned to find out. Number 2. Mark Burns, Trump's unlikely televangelist ally. New battle lines are being drawn over what America First really means, and Pastor Mark Burns has found himself on a side that many people would never have expected. Once known as one of Donald Trump's enthusiastic evangelical supporters, Burns has now taken a surprising position on the war in Ukraine. Trump's unofficial spiritual advisor is reportedly meeting regularly with people at the State Department, supporting secondary sanctions on Russian oil, and arguing that helping Ukraine in its war against Russia can actually be consistent with an America First approach. But Burns's unexpected position is only one part of the story. Long before he became an unlikely advocate for Ukraine, he had already established himself as one of the religious figures closest to Donald Trump. His relationship with Trump began years ago and eventually transformed him from a televangelist and political supporter into what he now describes as an unofficial spiritual diplomat within Trump's political world. The televangelist never expected to become one of Ukraine's most unlikely supporters. In fact, Burns once believed many of the arguments being promoted by Russia and its supporters. He appeared on different media outlets defending the idea that the United States should stay out of the conflict and questioning why America should continue providing support to Ukraine. But his views began to change after he developed a friendship with Ukraine's chief rabbi, Moshe Osman. Earlier this year, Burns traveled to Kyiv, and the trip would completely change the way he looked at the war. Instead of simply hearing about the destruction through television reports or political discussions, he saw the damage for himself. He visited places affected by the fighting, witnessed the destruction left behind by the war, and listened to people who had experienced the conflict personally. That experience forced Burns to reconsider many of the things he had previously believed. He now openly criticizes parts of the conservative media world that helped shape his earlier views, including figures and outlets such as Tucker Carlson, Fox News, and other right-wing voices that have questioned American support for Ukraine. Burns has admitted that he once believed Ukraine was a Nazi-supporting and racist country that persecuted Christians and therefore did not deserve American assistance. But after visiting the country and speaking with people there, he now says that much of what he believed was simply untrue. I believed the hype when they said Ukraine does not allow religious freedoms to happen. Burns is now using the influence he has built through his relationship with Trump and his position within conservative Christian circles to make a very different argument. He believes supporting Ukraine does not necessarily mean abandoning conservative principles or putting another country ahead of America. Instead, he argues that helping Ukraine can also serve American interests. But to understand why Burns's voice carries weight, it is important to look at how he first became connected to Donald Trump. Their relationship began in 2015, when Burns was invited to Trump Tower along with other evangelical leaders to discuss Trump's first campaign for president. Burns quickly became more than just another pastor attending a political meeting. He became an enthusiastic campaign surrogate, appearing at rallies across the country and energizing crowds with speeches that often sounded more like sermons than traditional political addresses. Burns's strong public support for Trump eventually earned him a place on the campaign's Evangelical Advisory Board. The pastor had already built his own religious following and had founded the Now TV network for Christians, but his association with Trump gave him a much larger platform within conservative politics and evangelical circles. What other televangelists' teachings have had a major impact on Donald Trump? And what made their influence so powerful? Keep watching to find out. Number 1. Kenneth Copeland, one of Trump's closest televangelists. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump once brought together a group of the religious leaders who had played an important role in Trump's political journey, giving people a rare look at the televangelists and pastors who had remained close to him for years. On August 27, 2018, they hosted a special White House dinner called the Celebration of Evangelical Leadership, where Trump welcomed pastors, televangelists, and ministry leaders who had supported him before and after he entered presidential politics. The gathering was especially significant because it highlighted the strong relationship Trump had developed with some of America's most influential evangelical leaders. These were not simply religious figures who supported Trump from a distance. Many had advised him, prayed with him, defended him publicly, and helped him connect with millions of conservative Christian voters. Among the prominent televangelists at the dinner was Kenneth Copeland, one of the most influential religious personalities in Trump's circle. During the event, Trump reportedly told the pastors and ministry leaders that he wanted to hear directly from them. He also promised that he believed the government's pressure and attacks against faith communities were coming to an end, and that religious groups would have a stronger voice under his administration. The first thing that happened was, the president said, "I want to hear from you," Copeland recalled in an interview for the Strang Report podcast. "I just want a number of you to come up and take this microphone, and I want to hear your heart. I want to hear what you have to say." According to Copeland, Trump quickly realized that he had placed himself in a room filled with preachers and religious leaders who could probably speak for hours. He jokingly reminded them not to take too long. The pastors laughed at Trump's comment, but Copeland said the atmosphere inside the room felt much more serious and spiritual than a normal political gathering. "I'm telling you, the anointing was there," Copeland said. "It was like being in a really anointed church service. Just the flow of the Spirit of God was just all over that." For Copeland, the dinner revealed something he believed many Americans did not understand about Trump. He believed Trump's presidency was not simply about politics, elections, or government policies. In his view, Trump was being guided by the Spirit of God and was carrying out a larger purpose that had been connected to his relationships with evangelical leaders. What could be the reason Donald Trump finally revealed his favorite televangelists? Keep watching to find out. Pastors pray for Trump's protection. Christian pastors gathered inside the Oval Office on Thursday to pray for U.S. President Donald Trump as the ongoing U.S.-Israel military offensive against Iran continued to escalate. The gathering brought several religious leaders into the White House at a time when tensions were rising and the president was facing difficult decisions over the unfolding conflict. In a video shared on X by White House Deputy Chief of Staff Dan Scavino, one of the pastors could be heard praying for continued blessing and favor over Trump. The pastor also asked God to give the president wisdom, strength, and guidance as he dealt with the growing challenges surrounding the conflict and the decisions that came with it. I pray for your grace and your protection over him. I pray for your grace and protection over our troops and all of our men and women serving in our armed forces, the pastor said during the prayer, asking for protection not only for Trump, but also for American military personnel serving in the region. The prayer took place as Israel and the United States continued their large-scale military offensive against Iran, which had begun on February 28th. The conflict had created growing tensions across the region, with Iran responding by launching drone and missile attacks aimed at Israel. Iranian strikes also targeted Gulf countries, where U.S. military forces and other American military assets were stationed, adding another layer of danger and uncertainty to an already escalating situation. With the conflict continuing and the possibility of further military action remaining a major concern, the presence of Christian pastors in the Oval Office highlighted the close relationship between Trump and influential religious figures. Their decision to gather and pray for the president showed the role that faith and religious support have continued to play around Trump during some of the most challenging moments of his presidency. Could these revelations by Donald Trump change how the world sees him? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for staying with us as we looked into these revelations by Donald Trump. Could this be the change the world needs? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video on your screen to explore more stories. See you there.